This November, voters in Pinellas County will decide the fate of Greenlight Pinellas. Will light rail and expanded bus service live up to its promise? This is Florida Matters.
Support for Florida Matters comes from the Hospitals of Baycare Health System, providing more than 100 health seminars, classes, and events each month. Baycare's mission is to build a healthier Tampa Bay. Register for a complimentary health seminar, class, or event at baycareevents.org.
From the Donna Studio at WUSF Public Media, I'm Carson Cooper. The promises of Greenlight Pinellas are an easing of congestion, better air quality, and an economic boost for Pinellas County. Critics are not buying it, so let's say hello to a supporter and a critic of Greenlight Pinellas. Kyle Parks is the communications director for the Yes on Greenlight campaign. Welcome to Florida Matters.
Thanks for having us, Carson.
All right, so there have been a lot of claims about Greenlight and for and against, and we'll get to those in a moment. But first of all, what is Greenlight exactly? It calls for a penny increase in the county sales tax in exchange for the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority to stop assessing property tax bills. And what does Pinellas County get out of that?
Well, basically, the system is going to have a 65% increase in bus service, longer hours, better service, along with a 24-mile rail line that goes from the workforce centers of downtown St. Pete to Gateway to downtown Clearwater.
With how many stops?
The stops are still being determined.
And how many trains? Say if I miss my train, how long do I have to wait for the next one?
Oh, they'll be running all day long.
Okay. And Barb Haselden is with No Tax for Tracks, which opposes Greenlight. Welcome to Florida Matters.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so what's not to like about this? More buses, a light rail, whisking commuters from Clearwater, St. Pete, and the Gateway area, and a tax swap that Mr. Parks claims will cost taxpayers, about $8.66 more a month in sales taxes. What's not to like about this?
Well, Carson, it's first of all, I think people in Pinellas County agree that we see empty buses running all over Pinellas County, and the current PSTA system is really poorly managed, and we have over 40 routes with only 5 routes contributing nearly half of the system ridership. So this is not a demand. We have about 1.6% of Pinellas County residents that in the 2010 census replied that they depended on PSTA to get to work. So we have 98% of the people that rely on the roads. And so basically we feel that if approved, the Pinellas sales tax rate would increase from 7 to 8%, and that would result in the highest sales tax in the state of Florida in all the 67 counties. And that there is no connection with this idea to Tampa. There's no real connection to Tampa, and a lot of people think that there is. And a sales tax rate hike, because of the nature of sales tax, it's regressive, and it will hurt the poorest and disabled vets, seniors on fixed income the worst, because it is a bigger portion of their income.
All right, Kyle Parks, I want to talk about why you say we need this expansion and the light rail in a moment, but let's talk about that money. The Greenlight penny would raise anywhere from $100 to $125 million a year.
Correct.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And the rail, the whole project is $2.2 billion, right? So now, assuming there are no cost overruns, you're still nearly $1 billion short. Where's the rest of that money going to come from?
Well, there's going to be different sources for that. The federal government, other kinds of sources for that money. Could I go ahead and address a few things Barbara mentioned?
We will certainly get to those. I do want to talk about funding of it, though, first.
Okay.
You mentioned federal money. Has that money been locked in?
No, the federal money, those conversations start after the referendum passes. There's a lot of questions right now about different details of the plan, but of course, as you can imagine, everything can't be locked in until the referendum passes.
Barb, Haselden, the way Kyle is sort of describing it, the way supporters describe it, the money will be there.
Well, that's certainly not only is that not true, it's possibly not even likely. And one of the sources for this, Carson, is a report that was done for Hillsborough just a few months ago called the ACOM. You can access this online. It's called the Hillsborough County Transit Option Assessment. And this is a report that just was completed in May regarding light rail for Hillsborough County. And this report, the conclusion of the report and the recommendation of the report is that with 50,000 rides per day in Hillsborough County, that light rail is not probably going to be approved for any kind of grants, and that they should work on improving their system. And it goes on to further state that Pinellas County has 40,000 rides a day. So between 40 and 45,000. So your question was about the grants, and this is a huge question, because if we pass this, there is no condition or contingency in this referendum that says if we don't get the other $1 billion, that we're not going to go forward. No, we will be on the hook as taxpayers to complete this and other fundraising methods.
All right, Kyle Parks, Pinellas County last raised its sales tax in 1990, the 1 cent penny for Pinellas, which funds capital improvements for roads, bridges. That means no money for operation or maintenance expenses. Can you guarantee that none of the penny for Pinellas money would be used in any way for Greenlight?
That's a Pinellas County Commission has spoken very clearly on that the penny for Pinellas is for different uses, which are also important for the county. One thing to note is that there has been a lot of talk about could the penny of Pinellas be used for this whole new transit system. The problem is that the transit system in Pinellas is chronically underfunded. Out of about 15 comparably sized metro areas in the country, we're spending the least of anywhere in the country. So new revenue is really the answer here.
Now, penny for Pinellas is only collected on the first $5,000 of a purchase. Would the Greenlight penny have a similar cutoff?
Very similar, and also there's a long list of about 200 items, things like groceries and medical items, that are exempt. So the idea that this is going to unfairly hurt the poor just doesn't really match the facts on that.
All right, we'll get away from the tax increase in just a moment, but Barb Haselden, penny for Pinellas brought the county sales tax rate up to the current 7%. Regardless of how that money has been spent, and voters do keep approving it, can you say that tax increase harmed Pinellas County residents in any way?
Well, actually, that is not up to the county commission to amend the appropriation of that tax. That is a statute. So that would have to be
a state law.
Yes, it is. It's a state law regarding how the penny for Pinellas and also the transit as to how it can be used.
All right, aside from that, though, penny for Pinellas, did it harm Pinellas County residents?
Well, you know, it's like mission creep, and this is what we've seen with things like the lottery for education, right? It's mission creep. So once they get it passed, I think we saw some great infrastructure improvements in Pinellas County at the beginning, the Bayside Bridge, for example, but now we're seeing a lot of expenditures of the penny for Pinellas that is going out in other directions. And so there is some concern about even the renewal of the penny for Pinellas. And many of the municipalities are pretty concerned because, you know, they get 40% of the penny for Pinellas, and it's all divided among those municipalities. And there's a lot of concern that if this 1% sales tax, another penny, is passed with the Greenlight Pinellas, that when that referendum comes back up and for renewal, because it has a 10-year window, Carson, once we pass this no tax or this Greenlight Pinellas, it is in perpetuity. So there's concern that the penny for Pinellas would fail in 2017.
Kyle Parks, Pinellas County's neighbors, Hillsborough and Pasco, have a 7% sales tax. Greenlight would give Pinellas an 8% sales tax, the highest in the state. Why wouldn't somebody in Pinellas County say they're shopping for a refrigerator or a car? Why wouldn't they just take a drive up to Pasco County and buy something there, saving hundreds of dollars? Wouldn't this hurt businesses in Pinellas County?
No, it's on most. When you talk about, you mentioned it earlier, it's capped at $5,000 the purchase, so it's not enough of a difference to cause somebody to drive an hour and a half to buy something somewhere else. And also, it's important to compare the sales tax to other areas of the country. There have been some concerns about it hurting tourism also, but the sales tax going up to the new number would actually be lower than cities like Nashville and New Orleans, which have incredible tourism. So what we've seen nationally is the sales tax number here really does continue to be very competitive nationally.
And what critics say that the sales tax increase hurts lower income residents, whereas the tax swap, the property tax increase or decrease rather would not help low income people who may rent. So is that a fair tax to pay for?
It is a fair tax. Actually, it's fair to have everyone who spends money in the county pay for transit, including our tourists. Based on the penny for Pinellas records, it looks like the tourists will be paying up to a third of the cost, which we think is fair since they'd be using transit. Also, going back to what's missing in that argument against saying that it hurts the poor is that think about what lower income people will get out of this plan. Right now they lack affordable ways to get to work. We have employers in the county who are actually running ads saying need reliable transportation because the bus doesn't run late enough in the evening or on weekends to get people to work. So if you can't afford that second car, which may be $10,000 a year, we think this plan really will help lower income residents.
All right, so let's go to this. Why do we need this expansion? You've already suggested that the bus service stands to improve quite a bit. Why else? What's the big reason why we need this expansion?
The big reason is we do not have a quality transportation system in the county or in Tampa Bay to match what a major metro area in the country should have. And the idea that as many people don't ride it as should is actually, think about the core routes of the bus system. The ridership on the core routes matches national average. If you have a better system with more hours and better service, people will use it. And it's fair to say that as a major metro area, we need this for people to get to work and also for seniors, for all people.
All right, Barb Haselden, Greenlight says Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority's budget has been frozen for 6 years. Ridership continues to go up, and they say if this doesn't happen, they'll have to cut bus service by 30%.
Well, I hardly know where to start. Their revenue has not been frozen. As a matter of fact, in 2012, when Mr. Miller first took over with PSTA, and we had that change, one of the first things that he did within a couple of months was to pass a 30% tax increase on the homeowners of Pinellas County for transit. So that was represented to us as being $5.7 million that 2012's budget was going to be in deficit. This is so critical, Carson, because I attended all those meetings and I followed it after the vote, and that 5.7 was held out to the public as the siren for the reason that we had to raise the transit tax by 30% on our homes, became a $7.7 million slush 8 months later. That $5.7 million actually vanished off of their budget, off of their deficit, and turned into a $7.7 million surplus that they put into reserves. And that 30% tax increase stays in place today. As a matter of fact, they just had a budget hearing 2 weeks ago, and they again pocketed another $3 million as a result again of that budget increase in 2012. So no, that they have plenty of money coming in, and they're spending a lot of it promoting Greenlight.
All right, Kyle Parks, there has been a lot of mistrust of the PSTA itself. Critics say it's a lousy steward of taxpayer money, spending $5 million in stimulus money for a 99-cent app that ended up not working, misspending a federal grant aimed at anti-terrorism security when it was just basically commercials for the buses. They say Greenlight is a thinly veiled bailout for the PSTA. And you say what?
First of all, it's not a bailout. As I was speaking earlier about this, it's that we don't have enough funding for a quality transportation system for a major metro area. PSTA would be the first to tell you that they've learned some things from these different things that have happened. Certainly, there are some things that could have been done better, but at the same time, the overall quality of the system is good, it is efficient, and what we need is a better system in terms of funding and more routes and more frequent times for the bus to come. You've got a lot of times in the area, we hear stories of people having to wait 3 hours for the bus. That's just crazy. So PSTA has had a lot of third-party look at their operations from Ernst & Young and other companies. Their basic running of the system is very high quality.
Barb Haselden, Greenlight will be implemented by PSTA, but there will be a Citizens Oversight Committee. County Commission will be watching all this. In fact, you might even be on that Oversight Committee, Barb Haselden. I mean, this is a big deal, and there will be lots of eyes watching. Does that not reassure you?
Certainly not. In fact, I was at the meeting a couple of weeks ago when they were talking about the Oversight Committee, and it was quite a discussion whether or not how they were going to even vet the members of the Oversight Committee, because the Oversight Committee, according to their theory, is going to be comprised of people who are experts in the field. Maybe that's the people that might be similar to the donor list here, which is Duke Energy has given to the Yes for Greenlight campaign $50,000, the National Association of Realtors $250,000, the Tampa Bay Rays $25,000, and I understand they just gave another $25,000. Carlton Fields Attorney $10,000, Raymond James $50,000, Tico $20,000, Sykes out of Tampa $50,000, Parsons Brinkerhoff, who designs rails and train systems, 25,000, which they just gave another 25, so they're at 50. So I can see these people being on the Citizen Oversight Committee, folks like this. And I think that we cannot underestimate the danger that we face here when this kind of money is involved in a 10-year project, and the cost overruns and the contracting, and it's so fraught with danger for our county.
Kyle Parks, we've heard it is a lot of money, and we've heard figures $2.2 billion over 10 years to build, and then $130 million a year to operate the entire system, including the rail, the bus system and the rail. Does this cost include design and construction management, startup costs?
It's meant to be inclusive, and also it's done with a downside provision. There was a lot of things learned from the recession with systems that were put in other cities when revenue dropped because of the recession. So it actually includes a downside provision of up to 40% in case the economy gets worse again. But also going back to basically what the cost is, look at the hundreds of millions of dollars which we spend on US 19 and Ulmerton and those kind of improvements, which are badly needed also. So putting this in context to what we do for roads, which is also important, those numbers I think look more in context.
Well, you've pointed out that one of the reasons the rail is needed is because of Clearwater and downtown St. Pete and the Gateway Carillon area have a combined workforce of 110,000 people. That sounds like a lot, but we're building a $2.2 billion rail. That works out to about $200,000 per rider. That sounds like a lot for too few people.
Well, basically, the argument that public transit has to pay for itself just doesn't make sense. Basically, if you had that argument, then every road in the county would be a toll road. So the idea is that, and we feel that it's time to create affordable transportation options for people to get to work who can't afford that second car. So I think it's more about having options for people and making sure they have quality roads and other options.
I want to talk about other rail systems around the country as well in just a moment, ridership and economic benefits in just a moment. On November 4th, voters in Pinellas County will decide the fate of Greenlight Pinellas, which would expand the county's bus service and build a light rail. There is more on Greenlight on our website, WUSFnews.org. Click on the Florida Matters link, and we would love to hear your opinion. Join us on our Facebook page or send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSFnews.org. I'm Carson Cooper. This is Florida Matters. This is Florida Matters. I'm Carson Cooper. My guests are Kyle Parks, the Communications Director for Yes on Greenlight, and Barb Haselden with No Tax for Tracks, which opposes Greenlight. Kyle Parks, another claim by Greenlight is that property values will go up along the rail line.
Based on what we've seen in other cities, there's been a lot of development along the rail lines because the stops create walkable areas for people to live. Seen that all over the country. So in that case, it really fits into what we see as the future of Pinellas County. We don't see the whole county becoming walkable urban environments, but we do see a lot of the county being in need of redevelopment. You've got the most built-out county in the state, a lot of older retail and neighborhoods like that. So in those specific areas, you would concentrate some new growth, which would help revitalize the county, but at the same time, that kind of growth in targeted areas helps the neighborhoods and the rest of the county keep their unique flavor.
You used Charlotte as an example, and I believe you had found that property values increased 90% along the first 2 miles of that line in Charlotte. I found a UNC study, a little more modest, 15% increase near downtown Charlotte, but little or no increase farther away.
I think it depends on what time frame you're looking at, and certainly you can look at values going up over the time of new projects. But one thing that Barbara mentioned about the ridership in these other cities, out of the 27 of the 28 metro areas that have rail, 27 of the 28 have voted to expand their systems. So these systems have gone to the voters repeatedly in these other cities, and if no one's riding and no one wants it, we think that those systems would not be passed as far as expansions.
Barb Haselden, rail has certainly reshaped cities like Atlanta and Washington, D.C. They spent a lot of money on MARTA and on Metro Rail in D.C. and business development far exceeded their expectations. Why couldn't that happen in Pinellas County?
Well, that's. I think it's great that you brought up Atlanta because to counter what Kyle just said, there was a citizens' effort statewide 2 years ago in Georgia, not quite. It was called T-SPLOST, and it was an attempt by the bureaucrats and politicians up there who had managed to get through different projects, and the people of Georgia said, this is enough. And there were people who came together and formed what No Tax for Tracks is doing countywide, which I can tell you is an incredible amount of work. They did it statewide to defeat T-SPLOST. It was an $8 million campaign on the Yes for T-SPLOST side and like $100,000 on the grassroots effort, and they beat them because people are trying to stop these projects. And I want to mention that, I don't have rail envy, not after learning about all of this. And I will name off cities that don't have rail: Cincinnati, Ohio; Columbus, Ohio; Indianapolis; Kansas City; Las Vegas; Louisville; Milwaukee; Providence, Rhode Island; Raleigh, Durham; Riverside, San Bernardino; Tampa, St. Pete. I think it's good that we're in that list because other cities, Charlotte's a great example. They have a $5 billion problem, and 3 of it is maintenance. It's in the paper. You can go on Google. You can Google earlier this year. Charlotte was in a real dire. They still are. They're in dire straits, trying to because they did have a sales tax failure during the project and the building of that system. Also, you were talking about affordability of housing. This is an article that I'm holding up in the Wall Street Journal just earlier this year. Talks about this gentleman who lived along the rail line, and when they came through, he couldn't afford the rent any longer in the apartment that he was living in because the owners of the apartment building decided to upgrade everything and raise the rents by 60%. He was priced out of his apartment.
Kyle Parks, can you point out an example of a model rail system? What city? Where's it done right now?
Well, Barbara is using pretty selective use of the facts here on these other cities. Overall, basically Denver, Phoenix, and Charlotte, and Salt Lake, I can go on and on about projects that have gotten off to a good start. The ridership is healthy. The voters have gone back and passed continuations of the line. These are all lines where things are working.
You might have a lot of convincing to do. A number of studies show that we actually like our cars. We may hate the traffic and sitting through 3 red lights, but we actually like to sit in our cars on the commute. It's me time. You can listen to the radio, and you don't have to jostle around with strangers. So is there really that much, is there that much hunger for public transportation when we're willing to do that commute in our cars?
We're not suggesting people give up their cars, and we're not suggesting that we become Manhattan where you don't even have a car. This is more about having options for different things that you need to do. So if you have somewhere you need to go and it's going to be heavy traffic, to have an option to do that. And especially like we talked about earlier, folks who can't afford a second or third car, how are they going to get to work? We have SPC students in Pinellas County who can't go to a late class on the bus because they have no way to get home. So it's really about having better options in addition to a car, or if you're in a position where your family can't afford 2 or 3 cars, to have those options.
You mentioned Greenlight's powerful supporters, the Tampa Bay Rays, the law firm Holland & Knight, Raymond James, St. Petersburg College. Yet polls show this could be a tough sell among voters.
Certainly, it's a challenge to try to cut through a lot of the information being thrown out about there. What we're finding out is that the more people we talk to about the plan, the more support we get, and different polls are showing different things. Our internal polling has actually showed us ahead, certainly, but our focus is not about what polls are showing at the moment. It's about, can we reach more people in Pinellas between now and the beginning of November to explain why the plan will be a good idea for Pinellas County. And when people hear that, our support only grows.
Barb Haselden, what's the big money behind opposition to Greenlight? Do you have any major sponsors for opposition?
Oh, those.
Main names.
You know what? I am so proud to say that we have raised altogether with cash and in kind. I think we're close to $70,000, and I think on behalf of No Tax for Tracks and all of the people who have hung in here now for over 3 years, with being on right in step and in tune with every meeting, every committee meeting, every step, every turn. The fact that we have raised that kind of money, it's going to take the raising tax crowd, it's going to take a lot more money for them to sell their message than our message, which is less taxes, more freedom, and the government needs to get out of our way and let the free markets work. That's the real message, is let's let the free market, if there's a demand, it will be met. But there is no demand for this. We do not need a second transportation system in Pinellas County.
All right, you may have already answered this, but I'll ask you both. Barb, Haselden first. What is the one single biggest misconception? You can call it a lie if you want, but what's the biggest misconception being put forth by supporters of Greenlight Pinellas?
Tax swap. Tax swap is the biggest lie. Because first of all, it can only the taxing authority can only be removed by the state. And that has already been vetoed by the governor. So, again, that is not a county level decision that they can make. So they can reset this tax. They're only setting it down to zero if this passes. So those 4 county commissioners that are on the PSTA board would have the ability in some later time, when this thing gets in trouble, to restart. Now, their answer is, we're going to go back to the state again, and we're going to try to get our taxing authority taken away. Well, are we supposed to trust on that? Because, let me just end with this, Carson. This is out of minutes from a February meeting last year of the Finance Committee of PSTA, where the minutes right here tell us that Mr. Miller said that the financial plan assumed that PSTA would continue to receive the ad valorem taxes as an additional source of funding. The PSTA board contradicted the alternative analysis financial plan in voting to eliminate the property tax as a source of funding if the sales tax passed. It's in the minutes. They do not have enough money if they don't have the ad valorem tax.
All right, Kyle Park, same question. The biggest misconception opponents of Greenlight are putting out there?
Probably the biggest misperception is that nobody rides a bus and nobody needs public transportation in Pinellas, so why make the system better? And I mentioned this earlier, the core routes are really what to look at here. They have the best service. They have buses coming every 20 minutes. They run later in the day. Those are the routes where we need more routes with that kind of service and more people. It's just common sense. Basically, if the system's better and offers more hours and better service, more people will use it.
Kyle Parks, Communications Director for the Yes on Greenlight campaign, and Barb Haselden with No Tax or Tracks. Very interesting conversation. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Share your thoughts. Will light rail and expanded bus service live up to its promise, or is it a boondoggle? Weigh in on our Facebook page. Florida Matters is produced by Lottie Watts and is a production of WUSF Public Media. I'm Carson Cooper. Thanks for listening.